Now, where did I put it? Here it is. Welcome to the Toolbox, where we discuss the tools we utilize every day. Yours to use or toss. It's up to you. But I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, just a quick heads up before we get the episode started. Today's episode could be difficult to listen to. We're going to be talking about loss and the perseverance through loss. So just as a heads up, it could be triggering, could be difficult to listen to. But I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get right to it. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tools for the Toolbox. I got another just an outstanding episode. I brought one of my brothers on here, and I can't wait to get the discussion, so we're going to dive in. As always, who are you, and what is your military background?
My name is Matthew Blencowe. I was a corporal at 1 CER from 2007 until I got out in 2014.
Mm-hmm. And so for those that don't know, you were a combat engineer. Just as I was a combat engineer, we served together, although we never actually went overseas together, but I'm so stoked to have you on here. This is going to be a great conversation. Now, you got out in 14, so what do you do now?
For the last 5 years, I've just been recovering, really. Trying to get my life back on track. I definitely had some ups and downs. I should not have gotten out of the military when I did. I was a very angry individual, drinking a lot, using a lot of non-prescription drugs and illicit things that, are illegal. And it was all a coping mechanism for me to try and deal with the things that I had been through overseas. And for me, it was, I can't admit that I'm all fucked up here, but if I can hide it and nobody knows the wiser, right, then I can carry on and keep doing my job. That worked for a little bit, and then the war ended, and it was like, okay, where are we going next? And there was no
crickets.
We're going somewhere next, right? We're not moving over to North Korea. We're not moving over to Iran, right? We're gonna go hang out in Wainwright with blanks or not even blank rounds. And it's like this is not a fun job for me anymore. I'm gonna go make some money up in Fort McMurray, and I timed it absolutely brilliantly when I got out of the military. I timed my release with the collapse of oil prices to perfection. So I got up there, made a shit ton of money, and then all of a sudden all the money was gone. Right? And then the problems started rolling in. And then life just really, it spiraled for me. One thing led to another, and I wound up losing my house. I lost my vehicle. I was 15 minutes away from packing up and going to live in the woods, right? And seeing how long I could live out there for, and it wouldn't have been long because it was the middle of fucking winter.
It's always the middle of winter, though, here. Like, just anytime, bad shit happens.
6 months of the year is the
middle of winter. So let's talk about the transition there for a second, because I think everyone's transition is different, and a lot of it is who you talk to as you get out, and it's also your attitude, right? Like when you get out, because I know a lot of troops, especially guys that get out, like myself being one of them, like Master Corporal and below, we don't have the experience with the paperwork, with the administrative side, that whereas someone who's Sergeant Warrant and above, when they get out, they're so used to doing the paperwork, I find their transitions are a lot smoother, just because they have that experience. And I remember being an angry corporal at 1 CR. I mean, you remember what I was like. And it's not a pleasant place to be in your head when you decide to leave the military, right? You leave the family, you leave the troops, you leave the consistency. You no longer have the set out plan every day. This is going to happen. I got to show up to work. We're going to do PT. I'm going to get there. I'm going to sit on my ass and do fucking nothing. I'm going to be angry all day, and then I'm going to go home. But even that consistency is, you kind of crave it. Right.
There's definitely a part of me that misses that knowing what I was going to do. Even if it was, I'm going to sit in the parking lot for 20 minutes and smoke cigarettes before I show up 5 minutes before my 10 minutes before timing. Right. But, you knew that at the end of the day, you had something to do. Right? Like, there were things that needed to be accomplished at the regiment. And, yeah, they weren't fun. They weren't glorious. But you still had a job to do. And you still had to show up and do it. Right? When I got out, like, I left the Army on a Thursday and I had a job on Monday. Right? And it was, it was a good job. But I was going into a skill set where the guys that were my age had already been doing that work for 7 or 8 years, right? And they'd all come up together, and it was a super boys club. And when I showed up, 25 years old, combat veteran that's been around the world, and I may not know how to do a lot of things, but I know how to not quit. And these guys, their way of doing things didn't jive with my way of doing things, to put it politely.
No.
Yeah, like showing up in the morning and doing hazard assessments and saying like, oh yeah, you got to be tied off if you're over 6 feet tall. I'm like, so I got to go up on that crane that's 10 foot above me. I got to tie off on a rope. I got to wear a hard hat and high vis stuff and be safe. And, take 20 minutes to do this job hazard assessment, write down all the potential hazards that could be there. Or I could just fucking go up there myself and do it because it needs to get done. And I'll be back down before you're finished writing the date and time of your job hazard assessment. Like, go fuck yourself.
What is this safe word you were referring to? Like,
safety is third, man. Safety is third. Drink water, look cool, then worry about safety.
And even then, there's like, it can move down the scale. There's some other stuff that come before that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, for me, I've never been a very safety conscious person.
No.
Like, I've never let safety rule my life. Like, you got to get the job done. Go get the job done. Right? And working on civvy side, I did not fit in well at all. I drank hard, I partied hard, and I would show up to work in the morning and outwork these guys. Right? You know, and they didn't take kindly to that. So.
No, and the one thing I think the military is really missing is I got lucky. I found it in Meaford. So when I got posted there, and I was hanging out other combat veterans who also needed a break from their regiments, and we were teaching recruits real world. This is what we fucking went through. No questions about it. And we were teaching all kinds, right? Like, it made sense to utilize someone like that, especially guys who are injured, people who have messed up backs or knees or any. Like, I don't understand why we don't utilize that core of experience and put them to school. Like, you don't need as a section commander in a school where you have a bunch of recruits. That sergeant doesn't need to run with the troops every day, right? So if he's got a messed up knee, so be it. Have one of the mass corporals run him. Have one of the you can even have like the corporals, the storesmen and stuff like that. Take them out. Go for a run, right? Cool. Go do some actual PT instead of running everywhere. How about doing some actual weight management, weight lifting, weight
real world stuff that you can go for a run, but do sprints. Yeah. Right? You don't need to go for 15 kilometers. Pepper pot for 150 meters and tell me how you
exactly. Feel. Yeah, running burpees with weapons. Like like that work anyway. But it blows me away that wasn't accepted. And I think that's one of the biggest issues why we have the military as it is right now, is the fact that we have all the guys that were good at combat, right? The guys that's what we joined the military for. got relegated to the sides because we didn't like admin and we didn't. And I always said there's field soldiers and there's regimental soldiers, right? And you kind of need both,
yeah,
but
and guys like me and you, like the time frame that we joined up in, the job that we joined up to do as combat engineers, we have zero excuse for sitting there and saying, "What do you mean I'm going to go to Afghanistan?"
Exactly.
Like, this is new.
I never saw this coming. How could you surprise me with this?
How dare you send me into a combat zone? Well, the name combat is in the job title.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what you're going to do. And I mean, like, that's what I wanted to do. Like, from the time I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I was 13 years old on September 11th, 2001. I was like, fucking 5 years, and I'm going to be knocking down the door, right? And, you know, like, I got lucky. I did 364 days from enrollment in basic to posted to the regiment, right? Like, it was super fast. They pushed guys through at a crazy rate, but they knew they needed bodies, right?
Yeah, and the attrition rate was so high. I mean, you'd have our threes course was not easy, and the amount of knowledge you have to pound into somebody over 4 months, and then ship him off to the regiment so that he can go overseas and be utilized and be useful. That's you're not going to get everyone through there, and you're not going to have. So you're just trying to get like mass quantity and see what sticks.
Yeah, I think we started with like 76 guys, and we graduated 29. Right, 29 guys for what, five regiments, including 5 RGC, 1, 2,
4.
No,
Yeah,
4.
1, 2, 4, and 5.
4 ESR and 5.
I actually asked for a posting to 3 CR Germany, and my career manager laughed at me, and I was like, "What?" He's like, "There's one position. It's for a sergeant." I'm like, "All right, fine. I can do it. Yeah, whatever." So, looking back now, it's been a while since you've transitioned out. If you could go back and talk to yourself, what's the one biggest piece of it? Because I mean, there's obviously lots of advice you could give to yourself, but like the biggest one, what do you think you would tell yourself to make it easier?
The biggest thing that I would tell myself would be to document the injuries I actually accrued. Right, there were broken bones that were misdiagnosed. Right, there were. And nobody that's going to listen to this is going to believe me, but I've got the photos to prove it. I broke my ankle 3 weeks into my tour, and I walked on it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Like the big bone in your ankle there, I shattered it. And it was just after Steve had gotten killed, and the medic looked at me, he's like, "I think this is either a really bad sprain or you've broken it. But either way, you should probably get it checked out." And I'm like, if I go back to CAF and I get an x-ray and they find a fracture, they're going to send me home. I've been here for 3 weeks. Like, just put me on OP for the next 4 or 5 days. I'll wrap my ankle up, keep it up tight. And if it doesn't feel better in 4 or 5 days, we can go for an x-ray. And you know what? I just didn't fucking complain about it after that. Right? And it wasn't until after my motorcycle accident, when I had to get a bone scan done, that I realized that, you know, looking at the list of all the fractures I've gotten, right, my right ankle has been fractured, and there's only been one time that I ever hurt my right ankle, and that was walking back to my patrol base 200 meters away. I stepped into a wadi and something cracked, and I felt really bad. Like, I'm a big dude, and with all my battle rattle, the boys had to stretcher me like 400 meters back to the fucking patrol base, and I was not a happy sports camper.
Getting just smoked doing it. That's not fun.
No, it was embarrassing, is what it was.
Yeah.
But I think with the transition, documenting the injuries that, you know, I just told myself, I don't have to tell anybody about this, right? I don't have to tell anybody that This is bothering me. Well, 5 years down the line, if you haven't told anybody about it and it's still bothering you, it's going to bother you worse. Right? And then you got nothing to fall back on. And you got to basically prove to whoever the powers are at B are that you need help. Right? That this is directly tied to what went on overseas.
And that's hard to do, especially when you're not used to advocating yourself. Well, I mean, we were all taught, you know, pain is weakness leaving the body, right? Like, don't complain about something. Are you hurt? Or suffer in silence. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I remember hearing that so many times.
Which
there's a point to it.
Yeah, in the middle of a war, absolutely. 100% suffer in silence. Get your job done, right? Worry about it after you've broken contact. But that demon is not going to get off your back just because you leave a war zone.
Yeah, we had, I don't know how many times I fucked up my knee. Both knees. I've dislocated them multiple times throughout the years in. And every time, I would think, being here in Canada, I was always like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, I'll ice it up for a little bit, and I'll be good to go for tomorrow. And then I'd go for a run, and it would be sore, but I'd finish it and be like, whatever. Little did I know that now, my knees are fucking destroyed, right? I can't run anymore. I can't do any of the long-distance stuff I used to really enjoy. I can't sit on the floor for very long with my legs crossed. Like, everything starts to hurt. But when there's a storm coming in, I can feel it in my knees, right? Like, it's shitty, but that's the thing. You never think to, you're specifically told not to talk about it. You're specifically told, if it's not broken, don't fucking worry about it. Guys don't want to do the paperwork. Nobody wants to fill out the CF-98s and the witness statements and all the blah, 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 blah. When I was an instructor, I had a couple of dudes who, like, they twisted their knee on a run or they hurt somewhere. And I'm like, write it all down. Here's my witness statement. Yeah. Here's the CF-98 form. Fill it out. Get it done. Put it in your file. Because you're 100% right. That is key.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes out of your life at the point of injury versus dealing with it for 5-6 years or however long Veterans Affairs takes to approve it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you got witness statements saying that, I saw this guy get hurt, right? And doctors signing off saying this is definitely an injury that's related to your direct job. It helps so much in that fight for getting the help you need.
Yeah, it's that check mark, right? The military doctor said, yep, he got hurt at this point in time. Cool. Later on, they look back. Oh, yep, you were injured. That makes perfect sense. Done. Paperwork gets filed. And, that actually leads right into what we want to talk about today, too, because we're going to talk about loss and the perseverance and what it takes to manage loss, which is always hard. But the one lesson that I've learned over the years is that, A, war never changes. People die. In war, people die. It's not always going to be your guys. It's not always going to be their guys. And it usually ends up being everybody. There was a quote I heard a long time ago. Was nobody ever wins a knife fight. Right? You're always going to get cut somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tricks is that if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't write it down, if you don't put it on paper, if you don't actually do the 30 minutes of work around it, then it just keeps going.
Yeah. And 100% it can spiral on you, right? If that's all you're thinking about, right, is coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? That's a deep, dark hole that is damn near impossible to get out of, right? And you're absolutely right. War, it doesn't change. If it was a nice thing, everybody would be doing it. But it's not, right? Killing other people, it fucking sucks, right? Good, bad, or otherwise. killing them for the right reasons, killing them for the wrong reasons, right? Watching your buddies get killed, watching your buddies get hurt, it sucks. And it sucks more when you think in the back of your mind, maybe I could have done something different, right? And if you let that thought eat away at you like I did for years, that'll take over everything, right? And it'll pop back up at the most inconvenient fucking times for you. And there's no way you're getting out of that whirlpool, because once it grabs hold, it's got a hold of you, and you're stuck reliving events that happened 4 or 5 years ago, 3 months ago,
10, 15 years ago.
Like, I can't remember what I had for breakfast on Tuesday, but I can remember exactly where I was on April 11th, 2010. I can remember everything about that fucking day.
Yep. The pain never leaves, right? That's the trick. And I think we, especially for the military guys, is like we thrive on order, right? That's how it works. If your section works, then there's an order to things, right? Sergeant, he gives the orders. Master Corporal makes sure everything gets done. The corporals know their shit. The privates are there to learn, right? There's an order to it. When you have to do something, there's an order to it. We really grasp for control, because the more control you have, the more you can mitigate risk, less bad things are going to happen. And the difficulty around war, it's a fucking crapshoot, right? And really, if you do the job to the best of your ability, you can still lose.
Yep, 100%.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and there is no safety in a combat zone, right? Like, everybody that is deployed in that forward area, everybody that's deployed in the rear lines, there's still that element of risk, and there's that element of luck, really, like good luck or bad luck, right? Like, I'm a firm believer that, you know, everybody's got a finite amount of time, and when that sand runs out, it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You can be walking across the street and get hit by a bus, or you can be in a combat zone and take one step that somebody didn't.
Yeah, we lost a really great leader on my tour because he stepped, I think it was like 5 or 6 inches off the right of the path, not even, and he fell in a well. Just shit happens, right? Like, and that's the thing, is that especially combat and war zones in general, is that it's chaos. It literally is chaos. Anything can happen at any time for no reason whatsoever, and especially in Afghanistan, where there's legacy minefields that you could just be in all of a sudden, that you realize, oh shit, like that's a bad day. There's old IEDs, there's new IEDs, there's old artillery shells just randomly from previous wars that it's fucked up. It's a fucked up place.
100%. But it was there was a simplicity in it too, right? And there was, like, you don't have to worry about traffic unless you're in KC, and in which case you just
I was gonna say, even then you don't really worry about it.
You're not worried about traffic in the same way that you're worried about driving around Monday, right? You're not worried about paying your electricity bill, because there is no electricity bill, right? You're not worried about what's going on with the Wi-Fi, because there is no fucking Wi-Fi.
Yep.
Right? You'll get it's kind of funny, because the things that we went without on my tour, I couldn't imagine going without that again. Right? Like, we didn't have a washing machine. Right? I did all my laundry
with the scrub board.
You asked me to do that now.
I did that too.
Yep,
it was friggin' horrible.
Yeah, I hated it. But we made it work.
Well, you got to have clean clothes, right? You do it or not.
100%. You got to take care of your stuff, right? Personal hygiene is a huge thing in a combat zone, because if you get a little bit of rot or something going on, and all of a sudden it's affecting everybody, right?
Yep.
I think we went 2.5 months without a fresh shower.
Gross.
And
gross.
It sucked, dude. We didn't even have solar showers. Like, it was baby wipes and bottled water.
Bird bath it up.
And it was... when we finally did manage to, sneak in and grab a shower, quickest, coldest shower I've ever had in my life. Like, instant brain freeze, scrubbed up, and then we went back, and just the horrendous odor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that you, like, it doesn't leave you, right? I smell that now, like 12 years from now, and I'm just like, right back to Afghanistan. Like, that dude smells like he's been on patrol for about 4 days. Like,
yeah. And the amount of sweat, like, just the sheer amount of sweat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you wipe your body down with a friggin' baby wipe. Doesn't matter. I remember my first shower in CAF, I think, because we had a solar shower a couple of weeks in. We eventually got the solar shower, but then you could only shower in the evening because during the day the water was boiling hot and would burn your skin. So you didn't take those. You had to wait until the evening. Anyway, but I remember going into CAF for, I think we were there for 3 or 4 hours to rearm, reload, and then we're going to head out. And they were like, yeah, boys, there's showers and shitters and blah, blah, blah. And every single one of us went in there and just, you strip off all the sweaty gear and all the just gross. And you turn the water on, and you just watch the grit and the dirt and everything just, Yeah. But when you're out there, as you said, there's a simplicity to the job, right? There is the job.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there is in your mind. You're not thinking about home. You're not thinking about the regiment. You're not thinking about that douchebag lieutenant who thinks he's there's the fucking road, and there's a metal detector.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about washing my arcs. I'm not concerned about anything like that. I'm focusing on making sure that nobody behind me blows up. Right?
Yep.
I'm making sure that this footpath is clear for all my guys that have got to come behind me. Right. And I was just talking with a buddy there last night, and like, you get to know what the sound was on your metal detector. You can tell, right, this is a small piece of shrapnel. Okay, this is something huge. I really need to investigate this. Or, maybe this is nothing. But with that, maybe this is nothing.
Maybe it's something.
You're still the first guy, right? You're still stepping on it, right? You're still, you got that feeling of, maybe I'm wrong. I could 100% be wrong, right? But if I'm going to be wrong,
I'm going to take it.
I'm going to be the one that suffers for it, right? I'm not going to walk by this and ignore it and let my guy behind me hit it, right? If somebody's going to go, it's going to.
Yeah, I always said if I'm going to find it,
that's the job we signed up for.
If I'm going to find it, I'm going to find it one way or the other, right? That's. I'd prefer to use my metal detector, sure, but if someone's going to find it, it's going to be me. And that was
part of the hang up that we had was when I went over October to May. So in the wintertime, it gets fucking cold there, and the ground gets fucking hard, right? And you can tell, right? Somebody's been digging here, or there's no way that anybody's been digging here. Right? Up until, I want to say, about February when it rained, and after it rained, it got super hot, and then Disturbed Earth was like looking for a nail and talcum powder.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But up until that point, you could kind of tell, like, you could look at something and go, that looks a little sketchy, right? I'm 100% going to check that out. But by checking it out, I mean, you got your bayonet and you're like jamming in there, not doing that delicate prod to find something. Like, you're digging and stabbing away at the dirt, like popping off hunks of rock, and it's like, there's nothing down there. It's a chunk of shrapnel. But we needed that time to be able to get good at finding those things, those legacy IEDs that had been there for a while, so that when we found the new ones that were put in specifically for us, it was like, okay, I've already dealt with shit, right? I know exactly how this fucking functions. I know that this is a victim-operated IED versus a remote control IED with somebody watching me.
Yeah, those were always, I think the biggest challenge for me, at least, was during the summer. You're looking at like a pile of talcum powder on another pile of talcum powder, and you're trying to determine whether or not that talcum powder came from that pile of talcum powder, or that, like, it's almost indistinguishable. But you get to a point where you're like, that's not the same pile of talcum powder. Like, those two types of dirt,
it's a shade off.
No, I don't like that. I'm gonna go check that shit out.
But you get that spidey sense, and you gotta trust your gut. And if your gut's telling you there's something wrong, who are you hurting? Who are you hurting by investigating and making sure? Now, if you willfully ignore that, and you got the potential to fucking hurt somebody, then you've got an issue. There's an issue that needs to be sorted out between the sappers at that point.
For sure. Well, I mean, and this is the mentality that we have to kind of maintain, but also figure out, because that mentality, I think, is what makes loss so difficult for us, right? It's because we get to a point where we're like, it's on us. It's on us, especially for the engineers, because that's our job, right? So if anybody gets hurt when we're around, that's our fault, right? And as much as we say it's our fault, it's not. It's also war.
It's just war,
right? And it's very hard when others are lost, and you know that you could have done something in a different universe, at a different time, in a different thing. Had you been there, had you not, had you had the metal detector out, had you were just prodding, whether you were on patrol, whether you're on a vehicle, like, there's all these other factors that come into play that you have no control over whatsoever. But I think what we do a lot of times is just take it on ourselves. And by losing others, we start to lose ourselves. We start to doubt whether or not we can do the job. We start to doubt whether or not we're valid as a troop, because bad things happen.
Yeah. I mean, survivor's guilt for me was a real thing for a lot of years. And it took a lot of therapy, and it took a lot of working on it to come to the realization that it is what it is, and this is what happened, and there's fuck all I can do to change it. But in my mindset, like the shoulda, coulda, woulda thing, I've got issues from one specific patrol that I did, that I knew I did something wrong on, and I didn't say anything, and it cost a guy's life. And what happened was, we were on our way back to Blencowe, and we'd been out for 4 or 5 days at that point, doing section houses, moving along Cairo Kala, and we're clearing the area so that we can hand it over to the Americans. And we're doing this, we're coming out of the section house, and the way we had run things, we'd never have 2 engineers together in a patrol, just in case something went bad. We were about 2.5 kilometers away from our patrol base in Blencowe, and stepped out of the building that we've been sleeping in. Kind of did this stutter step with a guy, and he stepped into my spot, and we carried on the patrol. And I knew that he was in my spot in the order of march, and we had a short halt, and I was sitting there having a cigarette with him, and we stood up, and I was like, fuck it, we're 2 kilometers away from the patrol base, right? Like, we're gonna go rearm, re-bomb up, get food and water, and we'll go back out. And when we go back out, I'll swap him spots then, right? And unfortunately, he never made it back. We got hit with we got hit by a RCID on that patrol. So there was somebody that was watching us watching that patrol, and specifically because that individual was carrying the radio, and we all knew they targeted radio guys, right? He got pinged. And for a long time, I blamed myself because he was where I should have been. And it's simple now to say it, but even if I had been there, that bomb was still going to go off. Right? If I had been there and I had been able to see it and identify it, there was still somebody on the other end that was going to clack that thing off. Right? As soon as I made this movement to push my guys back, or hopped on my PRR to say, "Hey guys, we got something,"
or just stop all of a sudden,
or just stop movement. Right? They were watching us. They were waiting for us. It was going to go off, and it's relieving for me to be able to say that now. But it's taken 12 years for me to get to this point where I would go without sleep for days because I couldn't get over the fact that I fucked up. Right? That I didn't say anything and it cost a guy his life.
You're 100% right. I mean, unfortunately, we've all, I think, sat there and picked apart every movement from a day like that, and like down to the last. Like I knew I was wrong. I should have said something, but also at the time, right? You're in your own head. You're like, well, it's 2 kilometers back. We're just gonna finish this patrol, and then we'll fucking switch back. And lots of times in patrols, people move in and out, and
people
right.
Move
So
all over the place.
Who's to say where you were? And I mean, as an RC, you might not have seen it, and it would have gone off underneath them anyway, right? Like if they're targeting radiomen, then they're targeting radiomen.
And unfortunately for our whole deployment, right? Like we didn't really use labs, right? Every time a device got initiated, it was victim operated or targeted at a dismounted patrol. And I want to say 95% of the stuff that we found was all VO. It was all victim operated. And when it started coming time for the Americans to do their surge, a lot of their stuff started becoming RC stuff, right? They started bringing in the more technologically advanced, right? Like we're going to set this off 50 meters outside their bubble.
Yeah. There was a big surge of foreign fighters during your guys' tour as well. Like when the Americans pushed that surge, there was a lot of foreign fighters in the country. So that's why tactics changed as well. Because when you guys were overseas, I was in the int shop. And so I was getting all your guys' reports. I was getting all of the new stuff that was coming in. And I was seeing things from a very different perspective that I had previously from being on the ground, right? And yeah, a lot of that was the Americans do things a little different than we do. And on top of that, there's a lot of foreign fighters in the country. So a lot of the old school Taliban guys weren't out there as much. So tactics going to switch, change, and blah, blah, blah. And I know by the end of my tour, they started targeting the engineers. And then by your tour, they were actively targeting engineers, radiomen, anybody that looked different, right? If you had the PCM was getting hit all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, if you did anything to stand out, you were 100% target.
And
right? And if you were carrying that little Chia, because we got rid of the mine labs right away because they were big and bulky, and I loved the mine lab.
Me too.
But the Chia was better.
That's a point of personal preference, I think, because I mean
the mine lab was great if you didn't have to hump it for 15 kilometers.
Yeah, which I did. It sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. So my hat's off to you if I was wearing it.
But no, it blows. Like I get it. And the Chias were lighter. I just found that they weren't as. I guess really what it is I did the train the trainer thing on them, and I found that I was more proficient with my mine lab than I was with the Chia.
Yeah.
And I think it just comes from the fact that I trained so hard on the mine lab and then used it for the whole tour. I had every tone changed. I could tell you what kind of metal was under. Like, it was just, I was that good with it.
Yeah.
And then the Chia was new, and I didn't like it because it was lighter and it wasn't quite as fine tuned, I guess, for my ears, right? Or I wasn't fine tuned enough for it. Either way,
Well, we did our whole workup training, pre-deployment training, even down through threes course, right? Everything was Mind Lab. And then I showed up on tour and it was like, hey, we got this new thing called Chia. You got to figure out how to use it. I'm like, okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I was talking to the Panjway podcast guys, Curtis and Curtis and Luke, and it was hilarious because they were talking about the Wolfhound, and that they were the next. So there was the Chia, and then there was something else, and then the what they were using, or the Mindhound. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And that were just given out to the infantry. Same basic thing. Like, here's a metal detector. Figure it out. Here's a 5-minute class on it, and then go out and patrol with it. Right. And I was just, I'm killing myself laughing because I'm like, why? Like, why?
Yeah.
You're taking an entire job of the engineers. That is our whole fucking job. Not a whole, but like,
we live
a big part of
it.
it. And then just handing it to a bunch of infantryers, like,
yeah, like I've got a ton of respect for the infantry guys. I always will,
100%.
Always have.
That's not their job.
But I would never hand one of them my fucking mine detector and say, "Hey, go do my job."
Maybe I would train them on it just in case something happened to me and my metal detector was okay. Okay, here's a brief little. If shit happens, we're all gonna die. Here's an instance where you could use it, but to just hand it to them for patrol ops is like just silly. And I think
somebody probably got promoted over that
exactly.
idea.
It actually bleeds into my next point here too, because what you were saying earlier was when you got out. I think I had the same issue when first thing I got out. I started drinking. And you start drinking more, and you start drinking more. And actually, it was while I was still in, because our culture surrounds alcohol so much. That's the natural reaction. Oh, I need to go to sleep. Well, I'm going to pound back some scotch, and that'll put me to sleep. And then I'll wake up in the morning, and we'll start all over again, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I got back, it was immediate for me. Like, I was fucked up from leaving that tour. Right, like I did not want to leave Afghanistan, and went to Cyprus, did the decompression, had some incidents over there, and I got back to the regiment, and all of a sudden I went from being, one of 8 guys that could tell a major or a captain, no, sir, this is the way we're going to do it, right? You got to listen to me on this. Or having infantry sergeants come up to me and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Right? How would you do this? And as a young sapper corporal type going, well, in my opinion, you should do this, you should do that. Right? From being one of 8 dudes that was respected in a company of 120 guys to going back to the regiment of 600 guys that are exactly like me. Right? Yeah. I had a real hard time with that. I had a hard time. Adjusting to being one of the guys again.
Oh yeah,
right. Like guys would go out for beer calls, and they would start, talking about Afghanistan, talking about all the fucking cool shit they did, and it was fucking triggering for me. So I would go home, and I lived right next to a liquor store. And I'd grab a bottle, and I would drink. And I'd drink till I fucking passed out, and then I'd wake up, and I'd go to work in the morning. And that cycle repeated over and over and over again. Like, I was drinking a bottle of vodka a day at one point. And, like, you can't function like that.
Not for long.
Right? Like, you start missing timings, you start not being able to do PT, you start not caring about taking care of yourself. And all I wanted to do was go back to Afghanistan, to go back and fight. And the war was over, right? There was no more combat tours, right? So I lost that bit of who I was and basically got told, you're never going to do that again. And that sucked for me because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife the other day, and we got on to the topic of the fact that I never saw myself making it to 30. Right? Like, I joined up during a war in a combat arms trade in a place that is surrounded by mines and bombs and stuff while I went to go look for them. I never dreamed I would make it past 30. And so, yeah, absolutely. When we got home, the first thing I wanted to do was go back. I remember that very keenly when we showed up and I got told that I was still just a sapper, and I was, what was the wording? It was something along the lines of, you may have been overseas, you may think you know your fucking job, but you're still pieces of shit, you're just sappers, go back to the bay and shut the fuck up. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay. Outstanding.
Yeah. Like, the infantry guys that I was with, they trusted me with their fucking lives and their limbs, right? They trusted that when I said you're good to go,
that they were good. Yeah.
They were good to go. And when I get back to my own regiment, they don't trust me to fucking come back from a cigarette break, right? Or they don't trust me to be able to make a pot of coffee, or be alone for fucking 24 hours, be unsupervised for an 8-hour shift at work,
or show up at 7:15, right? 5 minutes before timing, right? Like, can't possibly do that. Got to be here at 6:30.
There's zero trust with your there's zero trust with your troops.
Exactly.
And I was like, what the fuck am I doing here?
I've said for many years that the war didn't last long enough for us. If we wanted to see actual change in the Canadian Forces, we needed a war that lasted long enough that we could cycle through the leadership. So you have actual combat vets on the ground who know what actual military stuff works. And that's where I was saying you need both, right? You need field troops and you need regimental guys, because there's still paperwork that needs to be done. There's still regimental stuff that needs to be done. People need to be trained. You have to go on course. You have to get promoted. You have to do blah, 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 blah. But if you push out all of those, the guys that know what the fuck they're doing on the ground, you push all those guys away, you're left with a bureaucracy. It's just basically an office job. And it's actually the same thing when you're talking about trauma, you're talking about addiction, you're talking about especially alcohol, right? It's a short-term pain reduction, right? These guys are making it hard for me to do my job because I just want to sit here and do paperwork. Get rid of them. Right, but long term, you're not actually benefiting the military. And for us, you come home, you're pissed off, you're tired, you don't want to fucking deal with people. You start drinking, and bourbon was my choice, and that bottle would be gone all of a sudden, and I'd be like, "Who the fuck drank my?" Oh, I did. Oh, okay. And then you wake up the next morning and you're dehydrated and hungover, and
you wake up the next morning in the bathtub and you go, "This is where I fucking parked."
I remember I was in the garage. Why? What the? Like it. Yeah. You give up the long-term wellness for the short-term pain reduction, because the long-term wellness requires pain. Like, you have to go through it, and you have to feel it and endure it.
And you've got to have the support system in place, right? Like, and I think that's one of the big failings in the military, is that they don't support guys that say, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Like, when I got out, I signed a piece of paper saying I didn't want to be here, didn't want to be an Army guy anymore, and 6 months later I was out. And the only people I ever talked to outside of the military were people that I wanted to talk to, right? I didn't have anybody checking up on me. I didn't have, because I just hang up the phone. right? Like, guys would reach out to talk to me, and I don't want to fucking talk to you, right? Like, I'm not your fucking troopy anymore. Like, why are you fucking calling me? And the same thing with the mental health side of the things, right? I went through the paperwork check off of PTSD and all that shit. And nope, totally fine, no symptoms, good. Yep, see you later, fucking peace out. Right? Because short term, I did not want to fucking deal with anything, and long term, it came back to bite me in the ass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I think one of the things we don't get taught, especially throughout the military, I mean, in life in the Western world in general, is that, you know, if you want things to work in the long term, you have to deal with the shit to get there first, right? Like, if you want a good crop and you're out on the farm, you have to plow the fields, you have to sow your seed, you have to fertilize, you have to water, you have to hope for rain, you have, like, if that's what you want, you have to go through all of the work and all the bullshit and all of the waking up at 5 a.m. because the fucking chickens need to be fed and blah 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 blah. And I mean, being on my family's ranch, same thing, man. It's like, cows need to be fed in the morning. Doesn't matter if it's Sunday, doesn't matter if you're tired, doesn't matter if you're fucking broken. Gotta feed the fucking cows. Go, off you go. And in the military is the same way. There's work to be done. Shut the fuck up, move on. But we don't get taught that the work that we're doing now is for X 6 years down the road. Right? We just get told to shut the fuck up and do your job.
Yeah. And nobody says, hey, listen, this is going to help you later. It's going to suck now, but later on, you're going to be better for it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's with everything, too. I got told at one point, I got asked if I wanted to be on the counter IED team to do the CIED number 2's course. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want my HB. I don't want to be a fucking bomb text bitch and get him his suit for the next 6 months. I'm not going to do that. And the sergeant was like, okay. And he left. Now, had he sat down and been like, okay, look, dude, I understand your feelings. I get it. You don't want to be that guy. Cool. You take this course now. You do your 6 months of time. It's going to suck. Yes. After that, you get your CIDA's course. You become the tech. You do that for a year. You'll have your HB in 2. Right? Like, if that's where you want to go, that's how you have to get there right now. Had I...
Yeah, they don't tell you the line of progression. They just ask you, are you good?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, cool. Fine.
Yeah, peace out. And that's, so many dudes got out between after 06 and up to 12. People were just pulling pin left, right, and center. Fuck this noise. I'm not doing this regimental bullshit. Fuck you. Go blah, 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 blah. And we lost...
Yeah, call me when there's another war.
And we lost all of the experience. Yeah. We lost all of the skill set. We lost all of the hard chargers that want the fucking job done right, rather than just having a check mark on the job is done.
Yeah, I would not have survived in the full-time army. I would have gotten 5 after for sure. There's no way that I could have kept my goddamn mouth shut, and there's no way that I could have been as politically correct as you need to be at like a sergeant's level or a warrant's level. Like, I don't believe there's room for political correctness in an organization where your entire job is to go out and fucking kill people. Right? Like, there's no politically correct way to do that job.
No, especially not our job.
Right?
Like, I remember doing the booby trap house at one point, and the guy was like, when you're thinking about booby traps, how would you kill you? And I was like, so many ways. And he's like, that's what you have to expect. Right? Like, well, I mean, really, if you're thinking about it, if I was fighting the Russians, or we were fighting the Chinese, or if we were fighting the fucking North Koreans or whatever, their combat engineers are trained combat engineers. So the skill sets that they have are going to be comparable to the skill sets that I have. And really what it comes down to...
Yeah, they're going to be able to look at a device and say, hey, there's the detonator. If I snip that, it's fucking done.
But Also, I know that he's going to know that. So I'm going to put a secondary charge on a closed loop. So when you cut that detonator, that second one's going to go off. And if he knows that, then he's going to bypass that, and I'm going to hit him with my tertiary. And like, it just becomes this overarching, oh my God, what do we do?
Yeah. You're playing this mind game with yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
But this is also how we learn. Right? And this is how I learned about mental health. This is how I learned about all the other things, was that I started thinking about, if I was healthy, what would I do right now? Right? If my best self, what's the next thing I need to do right now? The next best thing, or the next right thing, or the next whatever you want to call it. But like, there's a point where you have to say, instead of if everything is shit, how do I get out of it? It's, if everything was right, where would I go? Right? And that's where you get to that long-term progression, because then you can see the goal. And I think, Remembrance Day is very hard for a lot of us. It's coming up. It's not going to be a pleasant day for a lot of us, but I think the concept of Remembrance Day is the difference between mourning and remembrance. And that's the long-term versus short-term. Again, right? If the short-term pain is there, you're in mourning, right? You were actively mourning the loss of that person, the loss of that thing, the loss of yourself, the loss of whatever it is you want to talk about. And over time, with work, you can get to a point where you're remembering.
Yeah. And there is a huge difference between remembering and actively being mourning or actively grieving a loss, right? And you might be able to shut it off for 364 days, but on that one day, it's going to come back with a vengeance, right? And then all of a sudden, it's just like it happened fucking yesterday, right? And yeah, there's a lot of alcohol that gets consumed on Remembrance Day. And alcohol brings those feelings right back to the forefront. But I think if you can shift it from that thought of, I'm mourning this, I am grieving the loss of this, to turning it around to being like, I need to celebrate what was and honor the people who have fallen and the people who have passed away since that time, and bring it into let's get everybody together. We'll do the ceremony, we'll do the salute at the cenotaph, put the poppies on the ground, yada yada yada, and then let's go back to the bar and let's have a fucking party, right? Let's blow the roof off this place, metaphorically, not actually.
Although that would be fun, like.
It would be fun. On some of those buildings, you could make it go. But you can blow the roof off of it, and at the end of the day, you're just having fun with your friends, right? In an area where it's socially acceptable for army guys to talk about shit that would never get talked about anywhere other than a Legion, right? Like, and it's that one day of the year where you can cut loose on all those feelings that you've been holding on for the other 364 days. And you can turn around and say, it's all coming out tonight, good, bad, and otherwise. And you wake up in the morning with a hangover, but you feel better about it for getting it all off your chest.
That weight is gone.
Right? Instead of burying that shit down deep, dark, and, never letting it back out, never letting it get any air, and then it just consumes you, right? And then all of a sudden you're sitting there at the, West Edmonton Mall or something, and you can't remember how to function because you've just been totally consumed by this grief that you've been shutting in for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it's breaking your door down and you can't get away from it anymore. There's so many corollaries to it as well. Like, you think about tactics. If you never adjust your tactics, then you're going to get
shot in the face, right? Somebody's going to walk around those tactics and hit you from the side or go fucking whatever. You talk about martial arts. If you are stagnant in your own training, someone's going to come along and be better. If you are a writer and you always write the same thing and it never changes, someone's going to bypass you because you have to learn, you have to evolve, you have to develop. And, I'm in the Jewish faith, they say, when it comes to loss, they say, may their memory be a blessing. And I will always love that line because it reminds me that it's a choice, right? Like, you can choose to be downtrodden, and as you were saying earlier, right? Do you let this ruin your day? Do you let this ruin your week? Do you let it ruin your month? Do you let it ruin your year? And it's going to be that choice. It's up to you to say, okay, recognize I'm in pain, recognize I'm hurting, understand that, accept it. Okay, what's tomorrow got? And then go from there, right? And it's it's not easy. It's never fucking easy, and it's.
But nothing that's easy is worth it, right? If it was easy, we wouldn't have to have these tough conversations. We wouldn't have to, reach out and make sure that your buddy's okay. And it's because it's not easy. That's what makes it worth doing. Yep. Right.
And it's hard. I mean, not just physically hard, not just mentally hard, not emotionally hard, but you're challenging your own preconceptions. You're challenging the stuff that you thought was correct. You're throwing your own, you're throwing your brain on the fire and trying to figure out what the fuck how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Or you don't. And if you don't, we all know guys that don't, right? And it like you said, it's a long, dark hole. It is very, very hard to get out of. But possible, like with support.
100% is possible. Like I lost everything. Like you said, I was minutes away from going away and walking away into the woods. And the only reason I believe I'm still here is because I had somebody, my wife, that pulled me through it, that like picked me up, put me on her back, and carried me through my fucking depression. And it would have been too easy to quit and just say, you know what, I fucking had enough of this. I've had enough of the pain. I've had enough of dealing with myself and how I feel about myself and all the ways that I'm using to mask what I actually feel. And it would have been too easy to say, you know what, screw it, I'm out. But it was so worth it to buckle down and say, hey, there's something seriously fucking wrong, and I need to work at this, and I got to work at it every day. I got to keep trying to get better and better every day, and it's not like sitting out and deciding I'm gonna go for a 15-mile run, right? Because I used to be able to do. That's what I used to be able to do. I can strap up and do it now. Well, no, I'm almost 300 pounds now. I can't run fucking 15 meters, let alone 15 miles again. But I can take that next bound, and I can get to that next objective, and I can set realistic goals for myself. And even if that goal is just as simple as, hey, I got up and I fed the dogs, right? And my dogs are happy.
I had a shower today.
Yeah.
Right, like, yeah,
good
exactly.
Well done.
Yeah, it's a hard lesson going from, operating at such a high level. When you're talking, combat ops, and especially in the military, not even special forces types, but like rank force military people, we always got told, I don't know how many times I've heard this in my years, was we do more before 9 o'clock than the average person does that whole day. It happens.
Yeah.
There are times where we don't.
100%.
But there are like lots of times where you're up at 6, you're up at 5, and you're working till 3 o'clock the next morning, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Because the job's got to get
and
done.
we're so used to being able to just do it that later on in the years when you're all broken and beaten down, and the lesson I had to learn going back to the gym was like, I can't lift like I used to. I have to.
Yeah.
I was never a big gym rat anyway, but like, you gotta figure out what you can do right now. Start at 0.
You got to pace yourself and realize that, like, oh shit, I'm not Superman anymore, right? Like, hey, maybe it's okay to take it a little slow and get back into the groove, and get back into what feels right. And get back into, and you can apply that to the gym. You can apply that to work. You can apply that to every facet of your life. And it's okay to take your time to feel good.
Yep. It's the same thing like with loss as well, right? And the mourning, it's going to take a while. It's not going to be a tomorrow thing where you're going to magically feel better, right? And there are going to be times where you might have felt good for the last month, 2 months, 3 months, and you're starting to feel better, and then just get fucking knocked out by it. The best description I ever had for it was like, if you picture a box with a little square inside. You remember the old Windows logos that used to like bounce around for the screensavers? Yeah. Take that box, make it bounce around inside this box, and there's a button on this wall that is grief. And every time that box hits that button, you're going to get a full load of grief, right? And so in the beginning, that grief is big, right? It takes up that whole box. It's hitting you all the time, over and over and over and over and over again. Slowly, over time, and work, that internal box gets smaller and smaller, and it hits it less. It's still bouncing around in there, right? But every once in a while it's going to hit that button clean on, and it's just going to fucking put you to the ground.
Oh yeah. And
not letting that kind of shit derail you from benefiting from, growing, from getting better, from it's a hard road, because man, if you're not prepared to get grounded like that, it takes you a while to get back up.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody is prepared to really deal with grief. Like, I don't think any 19, 20-year-old that's just joined the Army and finds themselves in the combat zone is prepared to deal with grief, right? Like, for me, we didn't have time to deal with it, right? Like, Steve Marshall and I went through our SQ and our 3s course and went through all the training in the regiment. We were in the same troop, and he was in my sister section in my troop. And, I drove him to the airport, or to the LTF, the day that he deployed 3 days before I went. We were singing opera in the car driving away, having a great time. I said, yeah, I'll see you in 3 days. And I never saw him again. And I didn't have time to process that. I didn't have time to come to the realization, like, yeah, my friend is gone. Like, he's not coming back. I didn't have time to realize that he was gone. And when I came back, I was positive that I was seeing him. I'd walk through a shop or through a mall, and I'd just catch him out of the corner of your eye. It's like, oh fuck, there's Steve. I'm gonna go. He's gone, and then that whole spiral starts, and it's that was something for me that until I started asking for help and until I started talking with people about it. Like, that would set my whole week off, right? Because you get down into that thought process, and then there's nobody there to pull you out.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have the tools to pull yourself out either. Because I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand why I felt that way.
Yeah, and we're not prepared well enough, I think, for it. And there's a lot of times, we got told many times, like, just be prepared. We're going to see losses.
Oh yeah, stand by. Guys are
hurt.
Guys are gonna get hurt. Stand by. Guys are gonna die.
Man.
But you're standing there at ease or standing easy, and you're like, yeah, but it ain't gonna be my guys.
There's always the mentality, right? It's not gonna be me. Not gonna be my dudes. We're gonna be fine. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, we're good. We're coming through this. We're gonna have a party.
Exactly.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
It's never a fun discussion.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be had more often, and it was because I remember even while we were overseas and we lost Echo 2 and Bravo, we got basically told like, hey, they would have wanted us to keep working, and they would have 100%, right?
Yeah.
But there's no real like closure to that. We just keep working, and then we go home, and then you're like, cool, everyone's good. Right? And you check off all the boxes on the psych report when you get in, and you're like, yeah, I'm fine, peace out.
Yeah.
And you're not. Like, no one is, right? And I think a lot of the tempo that we had for our ops, there was such a sharp decline from being in theater to being in troop stores. Right, and he had nothing but time to sit there and think about shit that did happen, and you had no other recourse but to go and drink about it versus talking about it. Right? Or you'd only talk about it while you were drinking about it, and then those two things start 100%. To coincide, and it just becomes a whole bad anyway. So we've been rolling for just a little bit over an hour here, brother, and I can't thank you enough, first off, for being on here, because it's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Not easy, but I think it needs to be especially said. All the things that we're talking about, is like, it needs to be talked about.
It's got to get out in the open, because the more it's out in the open, the more it'll help people to realize, oh shit, I'm not the only one that's going through this.
Exactly. And so, first off, just thank you for being on, brother. I can't thank you enough. This is just awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Anything pressing that you can, it's on the top of your mind?
Yeah. Just for anybody listening, to like, if you're struggling with shit, go find your reason to take that next bound, right? There's no taking the easy way out doesn't help anybody. It just passes on to the people that you love and care about. And if you don't think there's anybody that loves and cares about you, I'll guarantee you that there are. And I'm on Facebook. Everybody's free to have my number. If you need to reach out to somebody that's going to listen to you, I'm here. I'll listen to you. Right? Taking the easy way out is not the solution. I mean, chin up, we're all soldiers, and we got to take that next bound, and that next bound could lead to happiness. So,
yeah, that's really it. That's really it.
Check in on your buddies. Make sure your buddies are okay.
That's the other side of it, right? Everyone always says
especially
reach out.
This time of year, especially around the 11th.
But everyone always says reach out, but I mean, you gotta check in with other guys too, right?
Yeah. The conversation goes both ways.
That is 100% it. So if anybody does want to follow you or find out more about you, I know you're all over social media. Where do people find you?
I have an Instagram. It's Ruthless and Toothless Matt 136.
I'll make sure to put it on the in the show notes, so if anybody wants to find you, they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
That's fantastic. Again, I can't thank you enough, brother. This has been fantastic, and hopefully we can get you on again and talk about something a little bit less difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Chimo, brother. That concludes this episode of The Toolbox. I really appreciate y'all listening. It has been my pleasure bringing you this awesome guest. If you like what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, and do all that awesome stuff. and I hope you can use some of the information that was offered. To all those putting on the line every day, first responders, military, veterans, civil servants, you guys are keeping us safe and keeping the country running. I really appreciate y'all. Hope to see you next time. Till then, stay open, stay humble, and stay focused. Shimo.